You are live.
We are live. This is the Senate Education Committee, January 31st, 2025 at 1:30. We're continuing our work, preparing ourselves to be ready for when the proposal from the Secretary of Ed and the administration fully drops. One of the issues we're going to have to figure out is how, as we revamp the system, independent school, as I said the other day, and I think we all know this, independent schools are one of sort of compared to the whole, a relatively small number of students are a critical part of the mix. And in some areas, they're a critical part of the mix. And so it's important that we gain a complete understanding of what independent schools are, how they operate, what's important to them, and what they do. And so today we have Mark Tashjian from one of the 4 historic academies, and Colin Igor from, let's just say, a next level, mid-level size independent school. And next week, we're going to try to get in a couple of people from the smaller independent schools and talk about their role in the system. But this is a particularly interesting opportunity to have Mark and Colin sitting at the table together, because Burton, Burton, and Long Trail are about 8 miles apart or whatever it is, if that.
Yeah, less than that.
Less than that. And so they're in the same ecosystem. And so it's one of the things that's interesting is that I'm sure you'll get to this is how the two of you interact with each other and what that means for students. With that introduction, by the way, I guess we should start on our end by going around the room and especially if people watching, introduce ourselves.
Senator Keisha Hinsdale, Chittenden Southeast.
Not a Hashim, Wyndham County. Good to meet you.
Dave Weeks, Rutland County.
Seth Baumgart's Bennington Senate District.
Terry Williams, Rutland County, Rupert Pullman.
All right. Steve Heffernan, Addison County District.
And then for the record.
I'm Colin Igo, head of school at Long Trail School in Dorset, Vermont.
And I'm Mark Tashjian. I'm head of Burton Burton Academy in Manchester, Vermont.
You're on.
All right. Well, thank you all for inviting us here. And what we thought we'd do is I would lead off and give you a little background on Burton Burton, and then I'll turn it over to Colin to do the same. And Senator Baumgart did point out that we're in very close proximity. Burton Burton is the big fish in the area. We serve almost 800 students. I think we're at 793 right now. And Colin's school, Long Trail School, is substantially smaller. But I think one of the messages is that we have found, we believe deeply that the two of us together serve the communities very well and better than any one of us could serve if you look at it from a parent's point of view. And so we're here together because we are together serving almost all of the students in the what we call the North Shire area, and it does stretch up close to or including people coming down from Rutland, and it stretches south, but the bulk of our community is right in that North Shire region. Burton Burton Academy, as you know, is one of the historic academies. We were founded in 1829, so we're coming up on 200 years in existence. And since our founding, we have been a school that serves the community. We've had open admissions, and we do everything we can to serve every segment of the community. We were started, like I said, in 1829 thanks to the first benefactor. It was a private funding. Joseph Burr gave $10,000, which was a lot of money back then, and it built a building and it started education for the community. This predates the whole public school movement in America. You go back to the later 1800s, and Horace Mann started conceiving of this notion that everybody should be educated. And obviously it's been, I think, a cornerstone of our democracy and has grown into that. But at the time, there wasn't this notion that every single student should have the opportunity to be educated, and towns or areas relied on private funding to create a school, and that's what happened. When you look at us now, we have about 200,000 square feet of buildings, and we operate on 50 acres in Manchester, Vermont. We have another 100-acre auxiliary campus called the Mountain Campus up in Peru, Vermont. All those facilities, all that land, since our inception, has been funded privately. When we expand and acquire new land, and that happened as recently as about 10 years ago, we raised the money, we bought the land, we raised the money, we build the buildings. So one of the most important features I want you to be aware of is that everything you see when you come to campus, and I would welcome any of you to campus, what you see is our buildings serving the public that have been funded privately. So we've never floated a public bond. No taxpayer dollars are needed or utilized to create the school that we are. We're very mission driven, and what shapes our decision making is a mission to educate students intellectually and morally for a life of responsibility, integrity, and service. What it doesn't say is that there's a below that mission is an absolute understanding that we exist to serve the public. We exist to serve our communities. We want to be a source of strength to those communities, and our communities are tremendously supportive in all kinds of ways of Burton, and we consider our community to be a source of strength for the school. We live by a set of core values, and I'm going to mention these and then make a comment about our political world, because I think it's really important to recognize. So the core values are, number one, engaging, vigorous educational experiences in academics, athletics, and the arts. So, and we've developed these, by the way, with our faculty and staff. I've been at the school since 2008. And soon after I arrived, we worked on these to really concretize our mission, because I wanted a set of guiding principles that would then help us to make decisions in all kinds of ways. So engaging, vigorous educational experiences. We chose those words intentionally because our goal, not just our hope, but our goal is that a student coming into a class leaves invigorated. Rigor sounds like if the kid's exhausted, that must have been a rigorous class. Invigorating is the notion that you come in and you engage intellectually in all kinds of ways in that class, and you leave it more energized than you arrived. It's a high standard. The second core value is respect for individual differences, which I think has always been crucial and continues to be a really important part of any good community. We come in all different shapes, sizes, colors, learning styles, orientations, genders. You know, when I arrived in 2008, I knew nothing about gender fluidity, for whatever that's worth. I don't think any of us did. And we've learned to embrace how people identify in their own way. And we expect and we build a community grounded on respect for individual differences. We value the highest standards of performance and behavior. And one of the things I say to kids is that you deserve to be at a school that expects the most from you. It's not just that we expect every kid to treat everyone else or behave in class. It's that we want to be a school where every kid is expected to bring their best every single day. We value a mindset of perseverance and reflection. And then the last thing, and it's sort of the cornerstone for what we are as a school, is we value being a supportive and caring community. So we have those pillars, and they guide us in long-term decision-making, and they guide us in short-term decision-making. And I simply want to say that those have lasted, we established them around 2010, and they've lasted, they're standing the test of time. And whenever we have issues, and every school I think has issues, and we have issues, we now have these pillars that we can use to interpret situations for kids and for adults. In serving the public, we have to have more than, I would say, just academic classes that you've all heard of, but we have those. We have over 160 courses. We have 18 AP classes. We have this year 121 students in those AP classes. 78% of our AP test takers get a 3 or above. But at least as important is the fact that we've developed programming to address particular needs of our population. We have a program called the Student Success Program, which is designed to support first-generation college-bound students. It's taking kids who often have struggled kindergarten through 8th grade and providing intensive support and counseling and opportunities and internships and more to open their eyes and get them thinking longer term about their future. One of the debilitating impacts of growing up in poverty is it's described as the poverty mindset. It can be a very myopic way of viewing the world when you have food insecurity and housing insecurity. And so we're trying to help kids who may have suffered from that limited mindset to think in broader terms about their possibilities. It's a really important program in our school. I can tell you that when we were developing it, it's now about 12 years old, one of the questions that kept coming up is this stigmatizing kids? And there was concern about that. And we think we turned that on its head by turning it into a program that instills pride in the purpose of the program. So these kids are called Success Scholars. They're given backpacks and swag and special opportunities, all to help them, quite frankly, break a cycle that can happen in multi-generational situations. So that's one program, the Student Success Program. We have a program called the Target Program that is for students who come onto our campus, look around, feel overwhelmed by the size and scale, and will do much better in a highly personalized environment. Some places call it alternative education. It's located about a mile away from the main campus in a house. And classes are in rooms about this size, and there will be 3 or 4 students in a class with a teacher, and kids can also go on internships during the day. So there's a lot of flexibility so that these kids, instead of freaking out or dropping out, they're able to come into a place that honors them, values them, and a place where they can thrive.
And those kids also on the main campus part of the time?
They are often on the main campus part of the time, but they have their home base in what they refer to as the little school. There's the big school and the little school. We have extensive special education programming. About 140 out of our 800 students are on some form of special support, the IEP or a 504 plan. And so we have full special ed programming, including we have a program called the Access Program that serves students with severe learning challenges, students with Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, severe autism, Angelman syndrome. Yeah. And we have a special program for them. I'm proud to tell you it is right in our main building. And I'm also proud to tell you that these students are fully connected with the broader flow of the school, the broader community. we were just honored with Special Olympics national recognition as a banner school for Special Olympics, because we've developed unified programming and have our neurotypical students connecting with and facilitating basketball, esports, soccer, and other activities with the access students. And you know, my position all along has been that our access program is better because it's wrapped around a school like Burr-and-Burton, and Burr-and-Burton is better for having the access program, and it's all an integral part of the community. So that gets us to, that kind of gives you a sense of the programs. I think I should stop, and I should let Colin say something, because his school is pretty good.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And I think, you know, thank you all, first of all, for inviting us in, and for all you're doing for education, for the state, particularly during a time where, you know, there are real concerns and challenges with education. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak with you. I'll share a little bit about Long Trail School, a little bit about the history, and then probably a lot about who we are today. So school was founded, unlike Burr-and-Burton, we are not in the 1800s. We're founded in 1975 by a man and woman named Dave and Reen Wilson, a couple. Some of you may know Dave. In fact, in 1975, he was in this building starting his new school and getting approved in a new school. And they began with 14 students in a rented room in the Dorset Sportsman's Club. So there's great stories for another time of those first days in one room of 4 teachers and 14 students. And from there, from 1975, this is our 50th year, the school has really grown. We currently serve 260 students, which is the largest that the school has ever been in grades 6 through 12. We've grown from that rented room in the Sportsman Club to a 60,000 square foot campus, a schoolhouse, a state-of-the-art field house. We have ample playing fields, and we happen to be in, I think, one of the most spectacularly naturally beautiful places in the world. And like Mark, invite you all to come down and visit, because while the buildings and the campus is spectacular, the students and the community, I'm going to just spend a little time sharing with you what happens in the walls. So, you know, over the course of the history of Long Trail, added programming. We're an international baccalaureate school, which, if you're not familiar with the IB program, is a world-class program, an internationally recognized program. We're the first IB school in Vermont, and the IB itself has actually expanded pretty dramatically over the past 15 years or so. And what I'm particularly proud of is that we are an accessible place because of our system that Mark talked about, with town tuition and our students and families and ability to choose the environment that's right for them. We serve 28 different towns in Vermont. In fact, students come all the way from Rutland Town and Chittenden, and then certainly there's students right in Manchester and Dorset. We also serve currently three towns in New York, students that come over to access Long Trail. And our mission is to create lifelong learners who reach their individual potential in an engaging, supportive community. When I think of that special sauce, I boil that down to high expectations in a compassionate community. And part of the makeup of the school, much like Burr-and-Burton, is grounded in our core values. They're simple. They're kindness, integrity, openness, responsibility, and stewardship. And so if I think of our mission as what we do, right, we want to create lifelong learners. They're going to reach their full potential. How we do it on a daily basis is with those values. And so it gives us a touch point for behaviors that are admirable, and then, as happens in adolescence, behaviors that need some recorrecting, right? We have a touchstone of, you know, how do we behave in this building? And we're really proud of that. We're really proud that students have access to a world-class education who otherwise wouldn't. I grew up in Massachusetts, and I went to public schools, and I knew of independent schools as this thing for the elite. And that was my framework as a kid in Massachusetts. And I couldn't be more proud at Long Trail, but also just as a father, 3 young kids, someone who cares about education, that our schools give access to all these kids. And we should be proud of that, particularly in a rural part of the world where we see that schools are struggling. The outcomes aren't matching up with what we want from our kids, excuse me. And I think we're doing a really nice job. I'm proud of that. And it's worth celebrating. And we have just some stats, and then I'll share with you some anecdotes, but 100% of our students graduate. Of those, about 96% choose a four-year college path. And those who don't, some will go right into the trades, some will go, we have a young woman who went right to the Air Force last year, go into service. And we take a lot of pride in knowing that they are prepared and supported and ready to not just have success getting to that next step, but success in college and beyond. And we work with those kids and stay in close touch with those kids, and whether they come from a family whose parents went to school, or that a lot of them went to college, pardon me, or a lot of them were first generation kids, to make sure that we have a dedicated college and career counselor who helps them find that next step, and we stay engaged with those kids. Like Byrne-Burton, all of our physical facilities are thanks to philanthropy in our community and people who invest and understand the value of providing this to the community. It's a lot of hard work, but we see that it's good for all of us. And I think it's particularly important to just mention that we actually have families who have a child at Byrne-Burton and a child at Long Trail School. I have colleagues who send their child to Byrne-Burton, and I think they're employees at Byrne-Burton who send their children to Long Trail. And the idea that this ecosystem, this little place in southwestern Vermont has options for kids to find their place and thrive is really worth celebrating. And I don't want to belabor the point, but particularly as we deal with things, challenges to education, that I think we're doing it well. And I just want to share three little anecdotes. Oh, and not just that I think we're doing it well. We actually, in 2023, put a ballot measure out to our community. And it was both, about the education system. District-wide, exactly. Thank you. Sorry for that. And it was about education. And in that ballot measure, and I could give you the exact wording, but 93% of all voters said that they supported and wanted to continue our current system of education. And
right, and
you can't get 93%.
The system is essentially, it's mostly the two of us together.
Right.
And, there's also Stratton Mountain School, right, that's captured within that. But they're very small and obviously niche because they're a ski school. So the question wasn't which one of our schools is better. And the question wasn't, anything other than, is this community well served by the system as it is, where any one of you as parents, we get to choose between our two schools. And 93% is, it's almost unheard of in this day and age for anything on a ballot. But there's almost universal agreement that this community is served really well educationally.
Yeah.
Can I ask?
Does Byrne-Burton, do you do K through 12?
We are 9 through 12.
9 through 10.
Yeah.
And we're 6 through 12.
6 to 12. So everything, most of the come from a public school, then into your.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. And we have, depending on the town they come from, 73% of our students are on town tuition. There are some towns that start that in 9th grade. Some towns like Pollitt and Rupert, Middletown Springs, and Wells start that in 7th grade. So that's why we're about 73% of our students are on town tuition. And
about 90% of our students are. So 90% town tuition. We have a small international program, about 45 international students coming from China, Spain, Brazil, Mexico, France, Germany, all over. And then about 30 private pay families that are coming from either what you would call operating districts, so they don't get any town tuition, or we even have families, and Colin does as well, that are coming over from New York State, from Cambridge or Salem or Granville.
And what tuition? How much is tuition?
Tuition the sending town tuition is I want to say $20,997, but I'm not positive.
Ours is 22,475, and depending on where the town you come from, you come with perhaps a different amount in town tuition. Yeah. Could I share one quick thing? Sure. I can stop, but I think and I really do, I would love, if any of you ever want to come visit, we'd love to have you. Because I've been part of, both as a student and then certainly as an educator, a wide range of schools. And what I am most proud of, and I think our students would want me to share with you, is the kindness and inclusivity at our school is unlike any place I've ever been. And, you know, we have students who come to our school who find for the first time they can be their full self, and whatever that means, right? And, you know, I want to share just one example, a student who came in 10th grade. She's a single parent. No one in her family has ever been to college. She would not have been able to access an independent school were it not for her town tuition. She worked really hard. She pursued the full IB diploma and achieved the full IB diploma, and then was accepted last year to Middlebury College. She's at Middlebury College. She's the first person in her family to ever go to college. And she's not only there, but she's succeeding. And her younger sister, now this year, is coming to Long Trail as well. And she is really proud, as she should be. And I think of that she hadn't been able to find an environment just yet that was able to unlock the potential that she had in spades and the work ethic that she showed for her 3 years there. And we also have a real environment of inclusivity where we've had a very, very strong LGBTQ plus student group, but not just a student group, an environment where those students feel safe and able to express themselves fully. And you may have seen that Long Trail School was in headlines a few years ago, battling a really challenging situation where folks were not as inclusive of some of our students. That was front page news around the world. While it was challenging, when I look back, that student who was at the heart of that was able to have an incredible experience where she could thrive as an individual and feel safe and protected and focus on her academics and her athletic pursuits. And last year at graduation, actually gave a commencement speech where she talked about the warmth and inclusivity of the community that she now, after a challenging childhood, was able to have a adolescent high school experience that has prepared her for success in life. And so I wanted to share those two examples because they don't really do it justice, like if you were there to walk the halls, but I think important to say that we pride ourselves on that. And I'll stop there, but thank you.
Senator Roman has done.
Oh, well, so you two are, I'm not interrupting the flow of your.
No, we're good.
Okay, great. I mean, you know, I would love to visit Long Trail Academy. I have had.
But by the way,
Multiplication.
sorry to interrupt, but we are going to do a visit to St. Johnsbury.
Oh,
great.
that's
We're
great
We're
too.
gonna visit
Okay.
St. Johnsbury.
I mean,
That's
yeah.
why these two came up.
Right.
St. Johnsbury.
St. Johnsbury and Burn Burton, the ones I've visited, you know, but I look forward to seeing Long Trail, and Burn Burton's an incredible place. My previous question had been, when you took that vote that was 93% successful, did that have a dollar figure attached to it? I mean, that, you know, I was a little bit curious about the
Right.
details, because that's an astoundingly high buy-in figure for, yes, we're happy to pay this tuition level and keep this system. I mean, budgets just don't usually pass by that much. So
Right.
that's kind of
No,
what it was.
It did not have a specific dollar figure.
Okay.
It was asking about a system of schools that are independently governed, that are serving the area, and people know the cost.
Yeah.
So I would say it was implicit,
Yeah.
but not explicit.
Right.
And, you know,
Got it.
if you don't like the cost, you don't like the system.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do you know
Yeah.
what I
No,
mean?
that's true. Yeah.
So I think it was embedded in
It
the
was actually
question,
on the same ballot.
Same ballot.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's very
Yes.
interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting.
along with, right, tuition
Um,
approvals and budget approval.
My other, you know, this is my first year on the education committee, and I have served on many different committees in the legislature in my 13th year. I worry about even asking a question because this is such a political topic. You know, but I will anyway. What do you think is part of your special sauce
Yeah.
that we can bring to public schools? I mean, it strikes me that on the one hand, you know, when you have private philanthropy that can support your facilities, it makes kids feel really special. It makes them feel like they're in a gilded place that is where they're invested in, et cetera. And in a way, we're almost avoiding this conversation about how we just don't invest in physical plant for public schools, you know? So I'm just struggling with like, it shouldn't, we have to figure out a system where
Right.
all kids have what you're able to create.
So if I can I, do you mind if I start?
Please.
It's really not the private philanthropy. It's all been built because of private philanthropy. But the cornerstone of how both of our schools, and I'm speaking for Long Trail too, were founded. They're founded with an entrepreneurial spirit by someone who envisioned something being possible. And we've been independently governed so that we have a self-perpetuating board of trustees that is fully committed to doing what each school is supposed to be doing. And in Burton's case, it's deeply committed to serving the public, to serving our communities. By being independent, and this is really important, I would say I hope you agree, I will do my best to convince you, but if I want to leave with you the fact that our independence is the essential element that has allowed Burton to grow through 200 years and evolve and become what we are. And I've been at the school since 2008, so this is my 17th year. You know, since 2008, we've been able to navigate through the recession. We've created the Student Success Program. We moved our Access Program into the heart of our building. We created unified programming. And I can give you a list of courses that have been created just in the last year or two. And it's all because everything that happens at Burton, every decision that's made is made within those walls with our mission and core values in mind, with the sole purpose of being a better school for our community. And Colin, I think, has a different mission and role in the community. So, you know, where we have a student success program that we're incredibly proud of with, you know, 250 students in it, and where we have full special education programming that we're incredibly proud of because it's such an important part of what we do. I don't want you to think Colin's job or Long Trail's job is to look just like us. It's to have their mission and purpose and decision-making guide them to be what they are today. But that independent governance washes through so that, you know, I'm the head of the school and I work with the academic team and we are making decisions about whom we hire and what courses to offer and how to challenge ourselves and how to push ourselves and how to shape our culture. And it's all based on our best effort to serve the community with everything right there. At no point do we get a directive from on high. And you know, the centralized decision-making is a different way of running anything. And I'm not saying it can't work or doesn't work. What I'm saying is that for Burton, this is who we are and this is how we become what we are. It's grounded in that independent governance and the strategic continuity that comes with it. And the strategic continuity allows us to raise money because people who want to donate their kind of money and, you know, millions of dollars of money to support infrastructure. We've just this fall, we raised about $4.5 million because we want to renovate a building and turn it into a full-blown STEM center. And those donors are confident that we're gonna follow through because they know we have strategic continuity. So it's a different way of financing, it's a different way of governing. It creates in our schools an entrepreneurial environment. We can talk about how to do that, and that's a really interesting exercise. But, you know, it's really hard to create an entrepreneurial environment at the grassroots level through centralized control. You know, maybe it's not impossible, but a lot of corporations have recognized that and pushed authority and decision-making outward. And, you know, I think we're examples of schools that have really thriving entrepreneurial environments because we're decentralized or we're centralized all in one place. So, yeah.
I know it's well said. I would add too, it's important not to lose sight of, you know, facilities are really important, but they do not make an educational program, right? I cut my teeth, I was teaching in Asia, my first job, and all I had was a piece of chalk and 55 students in a classroom. I may not have been the best teacher, but the facilities are important, but they don't make the educational program. The educational program is the mission and the best teachers, and we have, and independence is not a, you know, it's not correlation, it's causation, right? The independence to really train teachers well, to hire the best teachers, to retain the best teachers, to have strategic longevity is crucial to the success. And I will say also, families, I admire and respect Burn Burden, and I think it's mutual for Mark. And we also, well, no, but here's the thing. We're the best school. And if you ask Mark, he's gonna say they're the best school. But there's a healthiness in that. Families are gonna look and they come to us and say, okay, well, you know what, my daughter's better here and my son, and that also, we don't try to be the same, right? But we make each other better. And therefore, we make the community and the kids better.
Yeah, and on right on occasion, a student partway through the career will move from one to the other.
Yeah.
Because they realize.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
So Senator, what you have a question?
I have a comment and a question. First, the entrepreneur in me, coming out of the business world, first reaction is, why over 200 years and 50 years haven't you tried to replicate, you know, brand your school somewhere else in the state or other states? I'm just curious. So you don't have to answer that, but that's the first reaction is,
Right.
you're doing it right, you got the sauce, you know, replicate, you know, where it's appropriate. But anyway, that's just a comment. But I would like you to comment on, since you have a board structure in your schools, how do you maintain contact with the community? Like most communities have a school board, you don't, but you have something different. Can you at least comment on that? Because it's a different dynamic.
Sure. That's a great question. And do you want to?
I'll simply say that we have a significant number of trustees who are alums, who've grown up in the community and are very connected to the community. And so that's a really important part of thinking about the composition of the board, is this combination of commitment to Burn, like what Burn Burden is and should be for the community, and a board of trustees that has deep roots and deep ties to the community.
Are any of the seats, so just one second, are any of the seats dedicated to a community rep of one type or another?
Right, that's a good question. No, they're not. You know,
Sure.
it's all self-perpetuating, so they're dedicated to maintaining a balance of, you know, of perspectives and, you know.
Okay, thank you.
And I would say just a quick question on that.
Sure.
If that's all right, Chair. Income levels in the trustees,
Yes.
is it all over the place or are they pretty much all very well off?
It is all over the place.
That's good.
And if you're familiar with the independent school world, we're different from the vast majority of independent schools throughout this country because we're, you know, open admissions, serving the public, full special ed, and our board of trustees looks very different from the New York City trustees at the high-end independent schools. You know, they don't have community members. They have, I think, the people that you're describing, you know, very, very deep-pocketed people who, you know.
And can I go back to the community piece too, because I think that's really crucial to the success that, you know, we both live in the community, have children who attend the schools in the community, are for, in, and of the community, and whether that means, you know, coaching youth soccer and getting to know all those families, or the facilities that we do have. You know, we host, Mark mentioned, Special Olympics and youth basketball and youth soccer, and we're a small rural place, and so the facilities are for everyone. And we really try to do that, and then also make sure that we are, one of my least favorite phrases is that Long Trail's a hidden gem. I'm like, no, we want to be a gem, a well-known gem, right? And so we actually try to make a lot of effort to get out into the community and invite people to our school, because the more kids that can come to Long Trail School, the better.
Can you comment though on your board structure?
Oh yeah, our board structure is saying we don't have a specific seat designated for anyone, all volunteers. You know.
Thank you.
You serve, how many towns does Bergburg serve
You know,
as the orbit, if you will?
well, we have, between sending towns and choice towns combined, there are probably 17, 18, something like that. And then we get.
Since you've used those two terms, why don't you explain them to me?
Sure. So we have, the sending towns have been, are towns who have approved our sending town tuition, and students coming from those towns don't pay a nickel. You know, they're fully funded at I think it's $20,966 this year.
And is it true that any kid from those towns who wants to come to Bergburg can come to Bergburg?
Yes. I would say and I think it's important to have the caveat, there is occasionally a student whose special needs are outside of the ability of any of our schools, public or private, to serve that student. And we're not going to bring in a student who we can't serve. We're not set up to deal with students with a propensity for violence, for example. We have, you know, we're a very connected and open community. And so if a student has that kind of behavioral disorder, you know, it's not a public versus independent issue. It's that, you know, none of the schools would be set up to serve a kid in that situation. So I want to have that as the asterisk. But beyond that, we consider ourselves, and we are partners with the community in every sense of the word. And they can move into the community knowing that they have two very high quality educational options at their disposal. And it's a source of strength. I mean, you know, families move in all the time. I will say 13 years ago, we were at 630 students. Now we're at 800. So, you know, the market is speaking, and people we're bucking the demographic trends because people move into our communities in order to come to our schools. And you were 10, 12 years ago, you were not 250 students.
No, less than 100. And now we have 260. Yeah.
So our area is growing, and that economic vitality is in no small part because of our schools.
So teachers pay as compared to public, and do you have any union?
We do not have a union. Our pay, so we benchmark, I'll try to simplify it, we benchmark with peer schools as best we can, both locally and nationally, to be as competitive as we can. We offer, you know, full benefits and competitive pay. And that's a point of always trying to, retention strategies come in a variety of ways, professional development, culture of the school we found actually matters a lot too. And then of course, pay and benefits. And we work really hard. I think that's again, the independence and the flexibility. Like, as you all know well, as all of us know well, healthcare costs have been astronomical and out of control. And we've saw increases that were just unsustainable. And we did a lot of work. Myself and our business officer spent countless hours, and we actually just made a switch this year that saves significant costs. And we had the mobility and the flexibility to do that. And that was a
just a huge relief to our teachers, so.
And we are unionized, but we have a chapter of the NEA. We pay in the top 10%, and we might be right at the top now of schools in Vermont. We provide 100% medical benefits, so, which is almost, I think it is unheard of.
Yeah.
It's not just almost unheard of. Nobody else does that. But we're providing full benefits, and we are striving to be, right at the top, top 10%. I know we're in the top 10%. We might be right at the top of Vermont schools, public or independent, in terms of our salaries. And I will say, that said, the kind of school that we are, the ability for teachers to create and be creative, that's what keeps them there. So we have very low turnover in our teaching staff. Now I've been at the school 17 years. My predecessor was head for 15 years. His predecessor was head for 15 years. So we're coming up on 50 years with 3 heads. So that's the kind of stability that comes from all of us feeling like, we can do this. And there's something very inspiring about being able to come up with your best idea and not wonder who you have to convince to do it. Like, do it. That sounds good. And, in preparation for this, I sent an email to my academic dean and my associate head, said, I want to be able to talk about some of the courses that have been created in the last couple of years, just to give you an idea of what entrepreneurial thinking looks like. And I got a list back of and maybe it says I'm clueless and I should be paying closer attention, but I was astonished at the length of the list. And here's just a sampling. And it's just amazing, the creativity. So we have a page to stage writing, speaking, and acting class that's it's integrative with our drama teacher, an English teacher, and our cinematographer. They all got together and said, let's do this. We'll write the scripts, we'll act them out, we'll film them, we'll create we'll create film out of them. We have world music, a multicultural exploration. We have neurodiversity studies. Remember I said how our access program is better for being in Bern-Burton, and Bern-Burton is better for having the access program. So we've created coursework around neurodiversity, climate leadership and change, Project Bike Tech. I have our mountain bike coach, who's also our woodworking teacher, wanted to start Project Bike Tech, which certifies bike mechanics and is cross-listed as a physics course, because you learn all the physics involved in bicycle propulsion. Art of nature. We have literature, leadership, and learning in the outdoors. That's launching next year on our mountain campus. It's going to be a double block course, and it's combining an English teacher and an outdoor physical education leader. And they're going to go together with a group every day on this 100-acre wilderness campus that we have and teach this class. Environmental chemistry and literature, conservation biology and environmental literacy, LGBTQ plus history. We have a history course launching on the history of LGBTQ people. And Vermont ecology and data science. Again, that's also at the mountain campus. And that's going to be a course looking at the natural world and learning how to quantify and work with data. So those are just samplings, but this is fun. If you're a teacher, this is an exciting place to be. And you get paid pretty well, but not compared to the business world. We all know that. But like the environment and being respected as educational creators is really intoxicating. And that's, again, we're looking for secret sauce here. You want to work at a place like that, where if you have an idea, we say, Sure, how are you gonna make it happen? Not, well, let's see, or that's not, that's not in this rigid list of things we've been told we have to do. Why don't you just do your job, stay in your lane? We're kind of saying, your lane's pretty wide. So.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So it's a kind of a unique opportunity to have you guys in front of us where there's no filters, there's nobody giving us their opinions and what have you. We can ask you directly. So it's probably appropriate. Can you address the two systems, public, independent, and not operating by the same rules?
Mhm.
We hear that all the time.
Yeah, sure.
Can you address that?
I can.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Go ahead. I'll go second.
So it depends where that's coming from. There's a certain set of laws and regulations we absolutely positively should be subject to. They're kids. They deserve to go to an environment that's safe. We should be mandatory reporters. If something bad happens in our school or happens to a kid, or we suspect something bad has happened, we should by law be required to take action, just as anyone is in any public school. So there's a set of common sense rules, regulations, laws that absolutely apply to us and should apply to us. Then there are the things that you do because you're operating a very large public system. And then you look at Burt and go, that's not fair. We have to do all these things because we report to a superintendent who reports to somebody else, and we have centralized curriculum, and we have requirements on who we can hire, and so on and so forth. And if not fair is because we're not encumbered by that system, my answer is we're not a part of that system. It doesn't make sense for us. I'm not making a judgment about the system itself. You can make that judgment, but that's not us. We're independent. Our system works differently. And as a result of our system, you've seen us. You're all welcome to come visit. Tell me how we can be a better school. But I think it's really it's inaccurate or inappropriate to say, how come they have to do this, but you don't? That's because that's how they're governed. If we were governed that way, we'd have to do it too, but we're not. And so my simple answer is to really recognize that we're a different kind of animal. And I think it works. I think you'd think it works too. And you would really think it works if you had a kid and they were sending them to either one of our schools. So I don't know if that fully answers it, but
That's really not a question that I'm trying to seek an answer for.
Yeah.
I understand it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to allow this opportunity for you to articulate directly to us.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree with that and add two things. One, there are really clear rules that govern independent schools that are thoughtful and comprehensive, and those are clear, and obviously we all follow them. The second thing is I think that talking point sometimes gets in the way of education. I would be interested in operationalizing what someone means by, you don't have to follow the same set of rules, because we're laser focused on educating kids as best as we can. And I'm proud to say we do a really good job of that. And so I would be interested and welcome a conversation with any colleague at any school or any system to say, let's for a second just put that aside, that talking point, and say, what is the best for educating kids? And then make a system that achieves that. And it's actually educating, it's adolescence and educating kids is messy business, but it's actually pretty simple in a lot of ways, right? You get great teachers who are invested and who are masters of teaching, and you put them in an environment the right size and the tools and autonomy to do magic things happen, right? So I do get a little bit a little weary of that line, only because I don't think it's actually about the education that's happening in school. I think it's about something bigger that's probably the adults getting in the way of it.
Thank you.
So I kind of want to pick up on that because I'm trying to make sure I understand the comparison points, right?
Mhm.
When you talk a little bit about the budget and the tuitioning rate, it should tell us that like, we have enough money in the system to do right by our kids. If we spend the money on them, if we get creative, and if we have nimbleness. And so if we try to bring that to the larger system and figure out what's in the way, you know, it does strike me that in the way we're governed more broadly, there are some closed loops in a public school that both you as an independent school and say a college, even a public college like UVM, are doing things differently. You might have adjunct faculty, you know, who come in and teach bike mechanics and physics, you know, or you might have, so you might have alumni and guest lecturers and guest faculty who aren't asking to be paid the same as your highly paid teachers. And you might
Right.
have private philanthropy that's, you know, that most alumni who love their school would love to contribute, whether that school was private or public, if they knew they could give money to an institution and see change happen. You know, I mean, it's strikes me, I went to a school of 5,000 kids in Los Angeles. I went to school with Stephen Miller, who's also making a huge impact on this country right now in a very different way. You know, I think we had a very incredible and rich experience. And, you know, it's hard for me to understand, you know, when you're an alumni who loves your school and is given the opportunity to give back, really great things happen. You know, so that longevity piece is really interesting when we talk about centralizing more school districts, right? Like what I've heard from a lot of people about our proposal before us is, you know, yes, get the financial sort of shared, yes, share overhead, you know, become more nimble in how you direct your budget towards kids, but don't take the community away from the school. You know, don't have a necessarily one school board maybe that's for multiple counties. Maybe have the people who really care about the school for the school as involved as they can be, but centralize some overhead functions. So I guess I'm just really trying to understand, you know, they could operate similarly if you figured governance out, is what I'm hearing.
What, the public schools could?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel a little like it's sort of out of my lane. And what I would say is that, you know, with any of the proposals, anything we do, the question I ask all the time is, will it make us a better school? Sometimes I ask it explicitly, like, do you have an idea? How will it make us better? And if we get convinced, let's do it. And all the time I'm asking it implicitly when I'm looking at anything. So the argument for greater regulation on independent schools just because, or it's not fair, like, I think that's a hollow argument. You know, and it's hollow because I want to know how it makes it better for the kids that are coming to Burn or to Long Trail. And if it doesn't, then what are we doing? And why are we having the conversation? If anyone has an idea for how to make us better, let's have it, let's wrestle with it, and let's adopt it, because that's what I want to see.
Right.
In terms of getting into like how could public schools behave more entrepreneurially? You know, I would love to be part of that kind of a discussion, because I think that like entrepreneurial thinking in any organization is really valuable. That's how you unleash talent in business. You unleash talent in education, in hospitals, anywhere. But that would be separate, and I don't want to make pretend, oh, Mark Tashin has all the answers for how public schools can be better or not. And I think there's some wonderful public schools out there. And I don't want to be, I really want to be careful not to pretend we're better or say I'm better and everyone should be like us. I'm saying we're really good. We're really good. And if you want to understand it, you know, anyone can come visit and let's engage in that. And I want our public schools. We have public elementary schools in the area. I want them to be really, really good too. Because those kids come to Burton and Long Trail.
Yeah.
So, does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it does. It, you know, I think it goes back to Senator Weeks' question of like, how would we replicate this if we could? You know,
Right.
and what are the political whims that we're contributing to that schools have to respond to?
Right.
And are we adding to that? Maybe right now, I don't, you know.
I won't pretend to answer that, but I'm so glad that you're asking that question.
Yeah.
And like Mark, I would be happy to be part of the conversation of what I think makes really good schools and education. And, you know, as someone, as a father with 3 young kids, I care deeply about all of our schools being great, and that just benefits everyone.
So the difference I see in independent schools to public schools is just like you said, when I go to Burton or Long Trail, you already had a set of standards that when you come to the school, this is what we expect. You go to a public school, they can't do that because it may offend this person, or we can't set them type of rules from what I've seen. And that's why private school, individual schools, I believe are better, because when I do go to that school, I know what that school expects.
Right.
In a public school, it's almost impossible to set that expectation, because you'll have a parent that comes in and says, well, that's not what I want. So getting over that gap is, I see, a huge problem for this committee. And, you know, it's like, love to bring your school and say, this is the way we should do it. And then somebody, well, you'll have a class of people and, oh, that's not just what you said. That's not right. I don't want it. And being a public school, we have to look at that, and it becomes just what happens. So that's how I see the difference between independent, because you know what you get when you go to an independent school. Public school, you got school boards, you got, look how different we all are in this room. And when you're sending your child into that environment, this is what I want for my child. Where if I'm sending it to your school, you're going to Burn. This is what they expect from you. And, you know, this is what we want. And that was more of a comment, and my question also to you is transportation. How do kids get to your schools?
Yeah.
And is there any public, or is it all private?
We have 4 buses that go, to just oversimplify it, about an hour in every direction. So we pull from 28 different towns in Vermont. And then at the end of the day, we also have a bus that can take anyone to Manchester, where they go to the library there. Sometimes parents can.
And that's covered under tuition?
No, that's the transportation fee is different, is now, yeah. Within Mark's system is different.
Right, and in our school, certain towns pay for transportation to get kids to Burton. So it's either the town supporting it, and our kids are high school kids. So by the sophomore lot is now filling up because they start driving, and so there are a lot of cars that drive.
And do you offer driver ed?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
You as well?
Yeah, we're fortunate our history teacher has 2 jobs. Can I make a comment on your first comment, actually? Because I think it's important, going back to where we started, that this year, we start in 6th grade. With very, very few exceptions, of maybe a student who moved to Vermont from out of state or something. Our students are all coming from public schools. I hesitate to say 100%, because there's gonna be that one kid.
But did they choose to come to that school, or did the parents choose, or
So, yeah, it depends on the situation. A lot of the non-operating districts that start in 7th, those families choose where for 7th grade they're gonna go. But I think the thing I would say in response to your point, which I agree, is just how important setting the culture and shared expectations.
Oh, I agree 100%.
Yeah, and just affirming, teachers who care and that we agree our values and our culture, this is what we stand for, and we respect that every individual comes be an individual. But here are the non-negotiables that we're laser focused on, both character and academics, that we're gonna recorrect you in the right proportionate way, and that's, yeah, I mean, that special sauce that we kind
I
of.
think it's great.
Yeah.
Honestly.
No, and I think what comes to mind too is that, yeah, I'm in year 17 and I'm going strong. The turnover in public school principals is, I think, extremely high. I hear less than 3 years is the average tenure. I don't know for sure, but I think a conversation around school leadership and understanding the challenges and I think extreme frustrations, I think it's a really tough job. And I don't have an easy job. I think my job's pretty hard, but it's incredibly satisfying too. And I don't know if that's the case. I mean, it can't be the case if turnover is that high at a job. If you look at a job and, the average tenure is 3 years, something's wrong with the job. Maybe it should pay a lot more. Maybe the expectations are impossible to meet. I don't know, because I haven't lived in those shoes, but the first place I'd want to go is to sit down with a group of school principals and say, what's your life like? And, and how can we make it better? And if your life is better, you'll want to stay and you'll become a culture shaper in your school rather than the latest building administrator, which is not a very inspiring term, to be in the building and, ringing the bells at a certain time. So I think they have a really challenging job, as I guess what I would say.
So, I'll just want to interject you for a minute and say that I spent a lot of time this summer going around the Senate district, meeting with public school principals.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very impressed with a lot of them.
Yeah.
Working really hard, care deeply about their kids, and being as entrepreneurs that are allowed to be within the confines of the system. But so this committee, of course, what we're focusing today on that slice of about 4% of kids who go to the independent schools, a critical piece of the whole. But we also, and we will be spending equal time more thinking about the larger and how to make that system as creative and geared toward excellence and maybe entrepreneurial as we can. So just want to say that I think it's very important for us to just recognize the systems are, on the one hand, they're different. And we have this system for the reasons you're talking about. And then we also obviously want to spend real time focusing on the 96% and making sure that we're doing the best job we can on that side of the lane as well. So just to throw, I think Senator Heffernan had one of them.
Well, let me give you what happened in our school. We had
Can I stop for 1 minute? Yeah. I want to talk, I hate to do this, for members. Senator Weeks has called to my attention that the weather is degrading. It doesn't look like it here, but as we head south, and some concern about how bad the roads might be. The reason I ask this question is we have something scheduled at 3, and if the committee has concerns about that, what we have at 3 is something we could have next week. So,
it's your call.
Interrupt, but
They recommend that individual members kind of take a look at your own weather patterns, and then after we break from this, we'll maybe have a short conversation about
okay.
whether we.
The reason I ask is because Senate Finance is kind of waiting to see what we decide, because they're going to attend by Zoom. Why don't we go ahead?
I was just gonna say, the report from my partner down south is that the weather is quite bad. She got released from her job early to head home, so that's just, I know some of us have to drive south.
Yeah.
We go north. Yeah, we go north. So
You're going over the mountain too.
So why don't we, I'm somebody who normally says, tough, you live in Vermont, learn to drive in snow. But, why don't we cancel?
Okay.
And let's set a fine snow, and we can pick that up, we've got slots next week that we can pick that up and get people home while it's still light. Okay, that's almost a first for me, so, okay.
We did have what happened to Robert, so.
So I'm sorry.
All right, this happened in our school. We had a youngster, it was before 6 o'clock. Anyway, he got angry at the teacher, started yelling profanities at the teacher, and so sends him to the principal's office. Goes to the principal's office and just berates the principal with foul language and, so at your school, what would happen? Because there, called in the parents hoping that would help, but that didn't. They just berated him with foul language as well. This is our kid, you're not doing enough for him, and out they went.
Yeah.
So how would disciplinary action be where a poor principal in the public schools got to take and go, now what do I do? Because there's always legal ramifications if you do anything. So they feel, I think that's a lot of reasons. A lot of them, they love their jobs. They're there for the kids, just like all teachers are mainly there for. And this is what they put up with, and they only last because it's just, I think it's one of the things that we should look at, that if a parent or kid is being foul language and that's an automatic, some time away from school until you can learn to control your language. But what if that happened at your schools?
Yeah, happy to share. I mean, I think first, the recognition that we're proud of our schools and that adolescents are adolescents, right? So there's a lot of course correcting. What we work really hard to do is set common standards and be very, very deliberate in always following those processes when it comes to behavior. So we have clear guidelines in our handbook that we look at, and every year make sure they still are, the parents sign that handbook. You can never anticipate everything that's going to happen. We try as clearly and carefully as we can to have different tiers of what if this, then this. And we have proportionate responses to what most adolescents are going to demonstrate, right? The reality that making mistakes is part of that growth, in the same way the academic growth. And then I think particularly now, there are always going to be students, and they're very, very few, right? They're the exceptions that need additional support. And it's not just going to happen in any school under the sun. And I know as a state, we're thinking about, how do we help those kids who need, my wife's a clinical psychologist, right? And her docket's full, right? So what are we doing in schools and outside of them to give kids who really, need support, the supports that they can actually access? And we have those in school to a certain extent. But in terms of the actual behavior, then we have steps and follow through and proportionate response every way that goes from everything from a simple conversation that recorrects to, a detention, to a suspension, to, and engagement along with the family, and consistency. We have a dean of conduct and an assistant dean who lead that. I support and step in at the right times, of course, as well.
Consider Ron Finsdale, that's a release.
So I wanted to make sure I was understanding your reference to an incident that made international news. So I found it easily, and I do remember this. I just had to remind myself of the details. So I haven't been on this committee before. A private Christian school was then barred from Mid-Vermont Christian School was barred from participating in academic athletics, it looks like, and then they were barred from the tuitioning program, and then they filed a lawsuit to counter that. Maybe someone can answer what happened with that case, but I think that's a very live conversation right now. What are we going to do in an environment where we might have to draw a bright line around discrimination of any kind and, honor the will of Vermont voters who would like to ensure we don't fund that kind of discrimination. And, you know, ensure that maybe you're part of a cohort of independent schools where you're saying, hey, like, you're gonna mess this up for the rest of us. But, you know, that might force a conversation on us very soon, given the executive orders coming down, that causes us to have to behave in less nuanced, more black and white ways. Has that been coming up in your conversations with other independent schools, and, you know, maybe others can help answer this? How did this situation get resolved with this school? And do we still have schools that are discriminating against kids that are getting public tuition dollars?
Yeah,
You know the case. You
Yeah.
live the case.
yeah.
And I still think you should have gone on Tucker Carlson. He was invited.
Yeah,
You should have done it.
Oh, yeah.
Is the case still ongoing? Is that?
Yeah, I want to be careful on what I would.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure.
So I'm,
What I
okay,
can
For us,
speak to
what
them.
matters is how you handle.
Yeah, that's what I was
That's
gonna
say.
really
Yeah.
the limits of your.
sure,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
handle this.
sure.
So, this comes to our attention, in a very public way all of a sudden. And we weren't aware that, we're at the start of this, that there was a forfeit, as you saw.
Mhm.
We didn't know why. And then it blew up.
Mm.
And I mean, on a level of, and I don't want to, like, this isn't a woe is me. I'm not, I just
Yeah.
want to give.
Well, this was
Um,
Valley News, thank
yeah.
goodness.
So
but
that,
yes,
well,
it's
so
probably-
my phone at school, I think, can hold about 50 voicemails. And when I went in, it was full. And when I deleted those voicemails, before the end of the day, it was full again,
Mhm.
of every news outlet around, so it was international news. And then all of a sudden, we were thrust, a small school in southwestern Vermont, into a cultural war, right? And what I'm most proud of, and that our school and our students and those families, is that we're in this whole nonsense, including, yes, a phone call from a certain news producer to come on there. We were singularly focused on that student
Mhm.
and supporting that student. And we circled the wagons, and school went on, and athletics went on, and we didn't comment or get sucked into things that would take away from a 16-year-old kid who had a tough life, who's just trying to go to school and play some basketball, and just, that's it. So our response was to focus on that things that we can control, and we did that very well. You know, and I think that's actually probably emblematic of the way good schools are gonna operate in whatever it is, right?
Right.
Mission, values, the people in your walls.
Yeah.
And I will jump in and say that in response to that, a group of us put together a letter and sent it to the BPA,
Mm.
expecting that the school in question would be expelled from
Okay.
competition
Yeah,
because they were
yeah.
violating, you know, not the spirit of,
Mhm.
but they were violating the rules of the governing.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we expected, and I think it called for action,
Mhm.
in that
Mhm.
situation.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the biggest problem, people have to, I think people have different beliefs.
Mhm.
And people have religious beliefs, and those religious beliefs can inform their position on a variety of issues that any of us might disagree with.
Mhm.
But that's okay, like, until they do harm to another kid.
Mhm.
And in this case, it was very clearly, like, believe whatever you want to believe, but now you're doing harm to a kid that has nothing to do with you. And, you know, I think there just has to be a red line there, you know.
Yeah.
Vermont has clear anti-discrimination laws that.
I'll hold you for 1 second, because I think you're gonna follow up directly with this.
I was just going to say, I think
Consider Williams.
we should hear from Beth St. James about this topic before maybe asking any more questions about it, just because it sounds like it's an ongoing case.
Mhm.
That's all.
Yeah, so Consider Williams.
So I know your predecessor and his brother,
And his,
and, Steve Holden.
yeah, sure,
Yeah, and, his father was my principal.
no
And-
kidding.
And I stood in front of him a couple times when I was in high school, but it sounds like you set the standard, and I'm sure that, Long Trail does too, academically.
Yeah.
And as far as enforcing the standards, can you explain a little bit about how you do that? If somebody acts out or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not unlike what Colin described, but I laid out those set of core values. And, you know, someone dropping F-bombs left, right, and center is clearly violating those core values. It would make a difference if they're cursing at somebody as opposed to cursing, cursing at the world. So we would want to understand the behavior. I've got a team in my dean of students office. They're gonna work with the kid. If they're that worked up, they probably need some counseling. We have a counseling office and they go in and, we try to settle them down. And to me, the first issue is, can we settle the kid down and ensure his safety? If it was I think it was a boy you were talking about.
Yeah.
Ensure, get him settled down so he's no longer a danger to himself or anybody else. And then we can start, once he's settled down, talking about the behavior. I don't expect one of my deans to take a kid who's fully cranked up and march him into my office so I can yell at him too and expect him to settle down. I think we got to get the kid settled down. And then once we've done that, maybe, we're going to send you home, and then we're going to revisit this and talk about what discipline action is required and what support you need, because it's, that shouldn't be, that's indicative of something. And maybe you just were really upset in the moment, or maybe somebody said something to you that they shouldn't say, and that may change my picture a lot. I mean, you brought up racism, racial incident. I happen to have a hot button around racism, and if you want to see me at my absolute most fired up, try dropping a racial slur with me and see what happens. It's like, and if that's the case, all of a sudden I'm not that worried about a kid just dropping some F-bombs. What, the kid called you what? Okay, hold on, we're gonna back this up. And, I'm glad you didn't hit him. Thank you for not hitting him. And let's make sure that doesn't happen again. So I think, this is dealing with, somewhere between 250 and 800 teenagers every day. Like, the dynamics are usually more complex.
You look into the full story.
You got to get to the full story, and then you deal with it with clarity and compassion.
Yeah.
Both.
So I wanted to hit something else just before we wrap up. One of the realities of independent schools is all your teachers are not necessarily licensed.
Yes.
And what are some of the circumstances where that happens? Number one. But number two, what do you do to ensure that they're doing a good job in the classroom? If they're not going through the training to be a licensed teacher and yet they're teaching.
Right.
So what do you do to make sure that the kids in that class are getting the kind of education that they should be getting?
It goes back to the standard of.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of levers to pull in terms of professional growth, evaluation, and fulfillment too. We kind of put all of those together. So in hiring, oftentimes, especially, I can point to our French teacher, for instance, who is a native French speaker from France and taught in France for years, and actually he's taught all the way down kindergarten through 12th grade. He's not a certified teacher, but he's a magician in the classroom. And he comes in and in Dorset, Vermont, as a native French speaker, and happens also to be an incredible violinist to teach his violin too. But that's someone who's making a real impact that it would have just been a barrier to actually serving kids, right? How do we make sure that, and that's just one example, someone's not certified, but how do we make sure that teachers are delivering, one, there's outcomes, tangible outcomes of what are the successes that we're seeing from students. There's also the intangible outcomes in conversations with families, the accountability for what they're expecting. And then we have a really robust growth and evaluation system where our dean of faculty, our dean of academics, and myself, we're in classrooms all the time. All the time. We're getting feedback from kids all the time. we're constantly asking teachers to self-reflect, to go into small cohorts, to work together. Senator Baumgart's, can you come to my class and tell me what you think? It's a culture of growth, and that attracts the best teachers. If you think I want to get better because I can do this neat thing. And so, way along the margins, we'll have the teacher that we need to put on the performance improvement plan. But generally, I think our culture is so strong of growth and development that if you're not in for that, you see the writing on the wall and maybe want to find a different place. And then for teachers who do need, support and growth and improvement plans, that's a different track that is really thorough and deliberate in, visiting classes, reflections, growth, evaluation, and it's all tied obviously to retention and excellence. Yeah, that's a long version simplified as best I can.
And I think my answer would be, we make no distinction whatsoever between a licensed teacher and an unlicensed teacher. So to the extent that the question is, how do you ensure quality if the teacher isn't licensed? To me, a teacher's license is about as relevant to what we're doing as, we want teachers who are race car drivers. And, I have a driver's license. I'm not sure you want to put me behind the wheel of an F1 vehicle. And so simply being, every one of our teachers is part of a system. We have a 4-year cycle of evaluation, and reflection and professional development. And the teacher's license has nothing to do with whether you get hired. And it has nothing to do with whether or not you're going to be fully evaluated in the course of your first year, second year, third year, and reaching tenure. What matters is what you're doing in the classroom, and you're observed by our department chairs and our dean of faculty and so on. So we have a whole system. And that doesn't mean I think it's a negative to be a licensed teacher. I just, some of our best teachers are licensed teachers and some of our best teachers are unlicensed teachers. And, I haven't seen a direct correlation. The correlation is commitment to the profession of teaching.
You could hire a real scientist.
Oh, yeah.
To teach
Right,
science.
to teach science. And if they're good with kids, they'll be able to do it. And if they're not,
And they're evaluated.
and they're evaluated. Yeah.
Every 4 years, you said?
Well, we have a system where you're there's a 4-year cycle in the evaluation. Once you've gone through your first 3 years at Burton, there are 3 years where you're a probationary teacher. And then at the end of those 3 years, if it seems like it's working, then you go on to what we call track 2. And that places you on a 4-year cycle where 1 year you're developing professional development plan and goals, and year 2 you're implementing those goals, and year 3 you may be working on specific projects or a portfolio to demonstrate your growth, and in year 4 you're evaluated. So everyone is formally evaluated every 4 years.
Against their peers. Right?
Well, against our expectations for the highest standards of performance and behavior, because our core values apply to us as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we look and say, how are we doing? And if the teacher is not where, and I'm not the one who makes these determinations, by the way, it's the department chair and the dean of faculty. But if somebody is considered to be underperforming, then they will be put on a performance improvement plan, and they'll have the opportunity to address their issues and hopefully improve.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
So
One thing that's kind of neat of being an IB school is because you run the risk of just, living in an echo chamber and saying, we're great, right? But how can you actually check that? And I think we're constantly checking, but what's neat about an IB school is that students around the world take the same culminating assessment. And you can see how, our students in Southern Vermont match up with students globally, which is pretty, and our results are pretty phenomenal. Yeah.
Do you do any SAT or ACT, is it?
yeah,
On your junior or senior year, or?
sure.
Yeah. Do it for the whole class or just certain people?
Not everyone has to take it. Not everyone wants to take it. our college matriculation rate is about 85%. We have 100% graduation rate, about 85% college matriculation rate. And then we have kids who go into apprenticeships. They go straight into the workforce. We have kids who join the military. So we don't have 100% SAT test taking, but it's pretty high, SAT or ACT. And we do well, you know, typically we're averaging 100 to 120 points higher than the national average. You know, there are, I always want to be careful about, you know, trying to quantify how we're doing. But I think I always look at college admissions, and I think we should be a place where most kids are going to college, not all. And I think we should be a place where our top kids are going to top colleges. You know, the school shouldn't be the one that sets the ceiling on the kid. The kid should be the one that sets the ceiling. And, you know, I always, when I see a school and the top kids are going to mid-level colleges, I think it's telling you something about the school. There's something, you know, because top kids anywhere, it's not that there's something in the water and they're just not that bright. It's that they're not getting, they're not reaching their fullest potential. So we do look at top kids, and I expect our college list, and it is a who's who of top colleges in the country. I mean, we have kids now at, virtually every Ivy League school in Middlebury and Williams and Amherst, but that doesn't mean we're successful. All that means is if you're at the top end, you can fly as high as you want to fly. And then, we look at other factors to our kids finding the right schools to fulfill them in their journey. And that has to go top to bottom. And then you look at who's not going to college and what are they doing. And, you hope that we've been able to guide them in career counseling so that they're doing something that will lead to, a good living. We want them to go into an electrical apprenticeship because very quickly they can be making $40, $50 an hour as an electrician, as opposed to,
And we need them.
yeah, and we need them, right? And those jobs aren't going away, or plumbing, or building trades. And so
So are those scores available? So that we as a committee could compare?
I'd be happy to provide
Yeah.
those kinds of,
Yeah, I think-
SAT, average SAT scores and so forth.
Do you do NAEP as well or not? NAEP? Or is that just a public school?
We do take, is NAEP the statewide?
It's statewide,
I feel like the clueless head.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure.
4th through 8.
No, well, then we're 9 through 12, so no, we don't take the NAEP.
And
Our middle school students do, yeah, but upper school.
So, we're nearing our time.
I'm done.
But there's a French trip. Kids in the French class.
Yep,
Go to France, whatever it is.
yes.
What happens if it's a kid, a low-income kid?
So this gets to our financing, and when we have our tuition, we raise well over $1 million a year in annual fund each year, and that feeds directly into operations. We have an endowment, and we draw about $1 million a year from the endowment, so that feeds directly into operations. And then we have auxiliary revenues like an international program with 45 kids that's feeding another close to $2 million. So we work along with the tuition that we charge and receive. We're getting other revenues that allow us to do far more than we could just with the tuition. One of those things is we give away about $70,000 a year in financial aid to kids to go on school trips, there are spring break trips where kids get on airplanes and go to a variety of places. And if you need support for that, we'll fund virtually the whole trip. Every kid has to pay something. So if they have to pay $500 for a $3,500 art trip to Spain, their responsibility is to figure out how to get the $500. And we live in a community that employs a lot of student workers. I have 5 kids and the 2 who are old enough, one's in college and the 2 who are old enough to work, right? And they can, right. And it's because it's good to learn to work.
So they have skin in the game too.
So they have skin in the game. But it's, we work really hard so that everybody gets to participate in the full range of opportunities at Fairbury.
If I could real quick, what's your annual budget? Do you have that?
$22 million
On
approximately.
800 kids?
On 800 kids.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
Yeah, under Act 60 to 68, all public schools gave all that up. They
Yeah.
can't raise funds, they have no endowments,
right.
so.
Okay.
Can I say thank you?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
This is a really, I really appreciate, we really appreciate this opportunity and appreciate your questions, which feel important.
Yeah, and it's a genuine invitation, I know, to come visit both of our schools, would love to have you, and I think you'd enjoy
Yeah.
seeing some students.
In my neighborhood.
Great,
Yeah.
thank
When
you.
I come see him in a couple months.
You'll come to the
There you
better
go.
school in town.
Yeah, there you go.
Be safe on the way home, we don't want to lose you.
Yeah, I'm driving with him.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. He's in that one.
He's my F1 driver.
There we go.